All right, let's dive headfirst into a topic that's as delightful as finding a scorpion in your cornflakes. The magical, mystical, and frankly horrifying way big business, government rule makers, and even our sense of what's right sometimes team up. And guess who usually gets the short end of that particular stick? Yes, it's you and me. And basically anyone who isn't currently swimming in a vault of gold coins like a sociopathic duck. This isn't some grand conspiracy theory cooked up in a basement. It's a depressingly common strategy. It's a strategy where profits aren't just the goal, they're the only goal. And human lives, well, they're just another item on the expense report, somewhere between stapler replenishment and that weirdly expensive office plant. Now, you might be thinking, John, that sounds awfully cynical even for you. And to that I say, oh, you sweet summer child. Because when you peel back the layers of corporate jargon and regulatory mumbo-jumbo, what you often find is a cold, hard calculation. It's an equation where your well-being, your safety, even your continued existence is weighed against the almighty dollar or pound or whatever currency makes the shareholders cheer the loudest. It's a world where economic efficiency can somehow become a justification for things that would make a Bond villain blush. We're talking about a deliberate alignment, a cozy little ménage à trois between making money, writing rules, and bending morality until it screams for mercy. The terrifying part is how normal this has become. Companies, with their armies of lawyers and lobbyists, have gotten incredibly good at dressing up these profit-over-people shenanigans in fancy clothes. They'll talk about acceptable risks, cost-benefit analyses, and market-based solutions, all of which sound terribly grown-up and responsible. But often these are just sophisticated ways of saying we've done the math and it's cheaper to let some of you get hurt or sick or, die than it is to actually fix the problem. It's like a magic trick, except instead of pulling a rabbit out of a hat, they pull profits out of potential human suffering. And the regulators, sometimes they're playing right along, so over the next little while, we're going to pull back the curtain on this grim puppet show. We'll look at the playbook, the specific tactics used to make these horrifying trade-offs seem not just palatable, but like good business sense. We'll explore how they put a price on your life, how they kick the can of safety down the road until it rusts, and how they make sure that if anyone's going to pay for the human cost, it's definitely not them. Buckle up, because this is the hidden strategy of monetizing risk and, yes, morality itself. It's infuriating, it's systemic, and it affects absolutely everyone, unless you happen to be a corporation, in which case, congratulations, this is probably working out great for you. First up in our gallery of how to sleep at night while endangering a small city is a neat little trick called the value of a statistical life, or VSL. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? Like something cooked up by Nobel laureates in a gleaming lab. And in a way, it is. Economists and regulators use it all the time to decide if a new safety rule is worth it. The idea is to put a monetary figure on a human life, not a specific human life, mind you, heaven forbid, that would be monstrous. No, this is a statistical life, which is apparently much less emotionally taxing to put a price tag on. It's like saying, we're not valuing your Uncle Barry, we're valuing a theoretical Uncle Barry type unit. How do they even arrive at this number? Well, it's a fascinating, if slightly ghoulish process. They look at things like how much extra people are paid for risky jobs, or how much consumers are willing to pay for safety features like a slightly less explodey airbag. Then they crunch these numbers through complex formulas, and voila, out pops a figure, say $10 million. So if a safety measure costs $1 billion but is only expected to save 90 statistical lives, well, that's 900 million in statistical life value. The math says no. Tough luck. Future statistically dead people, the spreadsheets have spoken, and they say your collective existence isn't a good return on investment. The truly insidious part of the VSL is how it depersonalizes death and suffering. It transforms a human tragedy, a lost parent, a child who will never grow up, into a simple data point in a cost-benefit analysis. It allows corporations and governments to make decisions that will inevitably lead to fatalities, but to do so with a veneer of rationality and objectivity. Look, they can say, we didn't want to do this, but the VSL calculations showed it wasn't economically viable to prevent those unfortunate outcomes. It's the ultimate way to sanitize a horrifying choice, making it seem like just another boring Tuesday afternoon in the accounting department. And this isn't just some academic exercise. This VSL thinking worms its way into everything. It influences decisions about environmental regulations, workplace safety standards, and even healthcare spending. Think about a pharmaceutical company deciding whether to spend an extra few million on rigorous testing for a new drug that might have rare but fatal side effects. If the cost of that testing, plus any potential profit loss from delays, is more than the VSL of the few people who might die, well, you can guess which way that decision often leans. It's a chilling calculus that essentially says some lives are worth sacrificing for the greater economic good, or more accurately, for greater corporate profit. So now that we know governments and companies have a special number they slap on your theoretical corpse, let's talk about how this value of a statistical life plays out in the real world. Because, spoiler alert, that number isn't exactly consistent, and it can feel insultingly low depending on who's doing the calculating and, frankly, who you are. Imagine going to a car dealership and the salesman says this model has a 0.001% chance of spontaneous combustion, but don't worry, your VSL more than covers our potential liability. You'd run screaming, right? Yet this is the kind of internal logic that can justify not recalling a car with a known deadly defect if the cost of the recall exceeds the VSL multiplied by the expected number of fiery demises. Consider the infamous Ford Pinto case from the 1970s. Ford allegedly possessed a memo that calculated the cost of fixing a fuel tank prone to exploding in rear-end collisions versus the cost of paying out for potential burn deaths and injuries. The memo reportedly valued a human life at around $200,000, which, even back then, was less than the cost of a small house. So, the math for Ford apparently suggested that letting people occasionally burst into flames was the more economically prudent path. While Ford disputed the interpretation of that memo, the very existence of such a cost-benefit analysis involving human lives is, to put it mildly, a bit of a red flag, a giant, flaming red flag. This VSL thinking also rears its ugly head in healthcare. When new, expensive treatments or life-saving drugs come along, health systems, especially those with finite budgets, often have to make tough choices. They might use something called a QALY, or Quality Adjusted Life Year. This metric tries to value a year of healthy life. So, a treatment that extends life but with poor quality might be deemed less valuable than one that provides fewer years but in perfect health. It's another way of quantifying and ultimately rationing care based on perceived economic value. It's pragmatic, perhaps, but it can feel incredibly cruel if you or a loved one falls on the wrong side of that calculation. And the numbers themselves can be all over the place. One government agency might value a life at $10 million for, say, road safety improvements, while another, perhaps dealing with environmental toxins, might use a lower figure because the victims are different, or the costs of prevention are higher in that sector. This discrepancy alone tells you how arbitrary and, frankly, morally squishy this whole concept is. It's less about the inherent value of human life, which, should be priceless, and more about what society, or more accurately, what powerful institutions are willing to spend, and often the answer is less than you'd hope. Next up in our parade of profit-padding ploys is the grand old tradition of procrastination, corporate style. It's the art of acknowledging a problem, maybe even furrowing a brow and saying, "Gosh, that's terrible," and then doing absolutely nothing about it for as long as humanly, or rather corporately, possible. Why? Because fixing things costs money now. And future problems, well, those are for future executives, future shareholders, and most importantly, future budgets. This deliberate delay, this strategic foot-dragging, is a cornerstone of maximizing those lovely short-term profits, even if it means letting a known harm fester and grow. Think about industries that know their products or processes are causing harm. Maybe it's a chemical plant slowly poisoning a local water source, or a tech company aware that its platform is being used to spread dangerous misinformation. The immediate ethical response would be to stop the harm, right? Invest in cleaner technology, implement stricter moderation, whatever it takes. But that costs money, that hits the quarterly earnings report. So instead you get a masterclass in delay tactics, commission more studies, question the existing science, promise future innovations, Launch a PR campaign about all the good things you're doing and generally kick the can so far down the road it enters a different time zone. Climate change is perhaps the most colossal example of this. For decades, fossil fuel companies knew. They had the science, their own scientists told them about the catastrophic risks of burning fossil fuels. But admitting it and acting on it would have meant fundamentally changing their incredibly profitable business model. So, what did many of them do? They funded denial campaigns, lobbied against climate action, and sowed doubt in the public mind. All to keep the oil flowing and the profits soaring for just a little bit longer. The planet could wait. The future of humanity could wait. The next dividend payment, however, absolutely could not. This isn't just about being lazy or indecisive. It's a calculated strategy. Every year action is delayed is another year of unchecked profits from the harmful activity. It's another year where the costs of mitigation might fall on someone else. Maybe the government, maybe future generations. It's a cynical game of chicken where companies bet that they can extract maximum value before the inevitable reckoning. And often by the time that reckoning comes, the executives responsible have long since retired to their private islands, leaving a mess for others to clean up, if it can be cleaned up at all. It's the après-moi, Le Deluge school of business management, and it's depressingly effective. Section 5, that pesky little fine, just another business expense in the grand scheme of things. So, what happens when these companies, after years of profitable delay, finally get caught with their hands in the cookie jar of human suffering? Surely the regulatory hammer comes down hard, right? Well, sometimes, but often the penalties, the fines, the slaps on the wrist are seen less as a deterrent and more as just another predictable, manageable cost of doing business. It's like getting a parking ticket when you own the entire parking garage. Annoying perhaps, but hardly a reason to change your ways if the illegal parking is incredibly lucrative. Think about it. If a company makes, say, $1 billion in extra profit by skimping on safety measures or polluting a river, and the eventual fine is a mere $50 million, what's the actual lesson learned here? Is it don't pollute? Or is it polluting is profitable, even with the occasional entirely budgetable fine? For many large corporations, these fines are often laughably small compared to their overall revenue or the profits gained from the misconduct. They might issue a solemn apology, promise to do better, and then quietly pay the fine, factoring it into next year's projections alongside office supplies and executive bonuses. This is particularly evident in environmental regulations. A company might calculate that it's cheaper to continuously violate pollution limits and pay the resulting fines than it is to invest in expensive new filtration systems or cleaner technologies. The fines become, in essence, a license to pollute. The same can be true for labor violations. If the penalties for underpaying workers or forcing them into unsafe conditions are less than the savings achieved by doing so, the economic incentive is clear, albeit morally bankrupt. It's a system that can inadvertently encourage corner cutting because the punishment is just a line item on a spreadsheet. And even when fines are substantial, truly massive corporations can often absorb them. They might fight them in court for years, draining public resources, and eventually negotiate a settlement that, while sounding large in headlines, barely dents their global profits. This turns regulatory enforcement into a frustrating game of whack-a-mole, where the moles are multi-billion-dollar entities with very good lawyers. The fines need to be more than just a nuisance. They need to be genuinely painful, existentially threatening even, to truly change behavior. Otherwise, they're just the entry fee for playing dirty and getting away with it most of the time. Section 6. The someone else's problem field, how companies dodge bullets and you catch them. Now let's talk about another brilliant maneuver in the corporate playbook of profits über alles, externalizing harm. This is the art of making sure that while reap the rewards of a risky activity, someone else, your workers, the public, the environment, future generations, get stuck with the bill for the bad stuff. It's like throwing a wild party, making a huge mess, and then sneaking out the back, leaving your neighbors to deal with the cleanup and the noise complaints. Except instead of a messy living room, we're talking about poisoned ecosystems, chronic illnesses, and shattered lives. A classic example is pollution. A factory might save millions by dumping untreated waste into a river instead of investing in proper disposal systems. The factory gets higher profits, its shareholders are delighted. But the community downstream? They get contaminated drinking water, dead fish, and potential health problems. The cost of that pollution, the medical bills, the loss of livelihood for fishermen, the environmental cleanup, if it ever happens, is borne by others. The company has effectively shifted its operational costs onto society, turning a private gain into a public pain. It's a magic trick of accounting where the red ink disappears from their ledger and reappears on yours. This happens constantly in labor conditions too, especially in industries with long and complex supply chains. Big brands can contract out manufacturing to factories in countries with lax labor laws and abysmal safety standards. They can then sell the cheap goods for a hefty profit while remaining blissfully unaware of the sweatshop conditions, the child labor, or the hazardous environments where those goods are made. If a factory collapses or workers are exposed to dangerous chemicals, the brand can express shock, promise an investigation, and then quietly find another supplier. The human cost is absorbed by vulnerable workers far away, neatly cordoned off from the company's shiny corporate image and its bottom line. The core idea here is structuring risk so that the entity making the profit is insulated from the consequences of that profit-making. They create a moral hazard, a situation where they have an incentive to take undue risks, because they don't bear the full or any negative outcomes. It's like gambling with someone else's chips, but you get to keep all the winnings. This isn't just an unfortunate byproduct of capitalism. It's often a deliberately engineered feature designed to maximize returns by ensuring that the true cost of doing business never quite makes it onto the company's own balance sheet. Clever, cynical, and utterly devastating for those left holding the bag. Section 7. Are watchdogs more like lapdogs with lucrative book deals? So, you might be thinking, but John, what about the regulators, the government agencies? Aren't they supposed to stop all this corporate malarkey? And yes, in a perfect world, they would be the fierce, independent watchdogs protecting us from the rampaging profit beasts. But we, my friends, do not live in a perfect world. We live in a world where regulatory capture is a thing, a very real, very troubling thing. This is when the industries being regulated cozy up so close to the regulators that the watchdogs start acting more like well-fed lapdogs, complete with comfy beds and perhaps even a future lucrative lobbying job. How does this happen? Well, it's a multifaceted charm offensive. Industries spend colossal amounts of money on lobbying, showering politicians and regulators with campaign contributions, fancy dinners, and promises of glorious post-government employment. It's the infamous revolving door where regulators leave their government jobs to take high-paying positions in the very industries they were once supposed to oversee, and vice versa. Suddenly their perspective on strict enforcement might get a little softer. It's amazing how a 7-figure salary can change one's outlook on the necessity of, say, pesky emission standards. This capture doesn't always have to be so overtly corrupt. It can be subtler. Regulatory agencies are often underfunded and understaffed, while the industries they regulate have armies of lawyers and experts. These industries can flood the agencies with complex data, studies, often funded by them, surprise, and arguments that overwhelm the regulator's capacity to effectively scrutinize them. Over time, the agency might start to see the industry's perspective as the default, adopting its language and priorities. They might start to believe that what's good for big pharma, or big oil, or big tech is automatically good for the country. Spoiler, it often isn't. The consequences of regulatory capture are dire. It means weaker rules, lax enforcement, and a system where corporations can essentially write their own permission slips to engage in risky behavior. We see it in the financial sector, where light-touch regulation has, time and again, led to catastrophic crises. We see it in environmental protection, where agencies might drag their feet on classifying harmful chemicals or setting strong pollution limits. It means the supposed guardians of the public interest are, in effect, working for the special interests, leaving the rest of us to face the fallout. It's like hiring a bouncer who spends all night taking selfies with the troublemakers. Section 8. Waking up in a rigged game. How this nightmare affects us all, and how to throw a wrench in it. By now, you're probably feeling a delightful cocktail of rage and despair, and who could blame you? Because when you add it all up, the morbid math of valuing human life, the profitable procrastination on safety, the not my problem approach to harm, and the watchdogs who've forgotten how to bark, you realize this isn't just a few bad apples, this is systemic. These strategies create a pattern, a deeply ingrained way of doing business and governance, where financial gains are consistently, almost automatically prioritized over human welfare and environmental sanity. It's a rigged game, and the house, in this case, is owned by those who profit from the status quo. The impact is everywhere. It's in our healthcare, where the drive for profit can lead to exorbitant drug prices, denial of necessary care, or hospital staffing so thin it borders on dangerous. It's in our fight against climate change, where decades of deliberate obfuscation and delay by fossil fuel interests have brought us to the brink of catastrophe. It's in our workplaces, where companies might cut corners on safety to save a few bucks, leading to injuries or illnesses for their employees. It's even in the food we eat and the air we breathe, as agricultural and industrial giants prioritize output over long-term health and sustainability. No one is truly untouched by this relentless pursuit of profit at any cost. So, what can we, the statistically insignificant, possibly do about this colossal, infuriating mess? Well, despair is tempting, but it's also what they want. One key is transparency. We need to drag these calculations and decisions out into the sunlight. Investigative journalism, whistleblower protections, and freedom of information laws are crucial tools. When companies know their cost-benefit analysis of death might end up on the front page, they might think twice. Or at least they might need a better PR strategy, which is a start, I guess. We also need to demand stronger, truly independent regulatory bodies with actual teeth, not just gums. And then there's us. Collective action, public pressure, consumer boycotts, supporting organizations that fight for corporate accountability. These things can make a difference. It's about changing the calculus, making it for companies to behave badly than to do the right thing. This means advocating for fines that genuinely hurt, for regulations that can't be easily sidestepped, and for a cultural shift where prioritizing human lives and a livable planet isn't seen as a radical notion, but as the absolute baseline. It's a long, hard fight, like trying to assemble IKEA furniture in the dark, but the alternative is letting the spreadsheets win, and that, frankly, is an outcome too horrifying to contemplate. Section 9. Beyond the bottom line. Seriously, can we not prioritize not dying? So, we've been on a bit of a journey, haven't we? A delightful romp through the corporate wonderland where human lives are line items, safety is optional, and regulations are merely friendly suggestions. We've seen how the unholy trinity of economics, regulation, and a very flexible sort of morality can align to create a system that churns out profits, often at the direct expense of, well, us. From the chilling logic of the value of a statistical life to the profitable art of delay and the clever shell game of externalizing harm, the strategies are varied. But the goal is depressingly consistent. Make money, and if a few people, or a few ecosystems, or the entire planet get a bit roughed up in the process, so be it. It's a system that quantifies your existence, then decides if it's cost-effective to protect it. It's a system that postpones urgent action on known dangers because addressing them now might dent the next quarter's earnings. It's a system that allows companies to treat massive society-harming risks as someone else's problem, while the regulators who are supposed to protect us are sometimes too captured, too cowed, or too convinced by the industry siren song to effectively intervene. The result is a world where the financial bottom line often eclipses the human lifeline and where acceptable losses are discussed with a calmness that should frankly terrify everyone. Challenging this isn't easy. It requires us to look past the glossy corporate brochures and the soothing political rhetoric. It means asking uncomfortable questions about who truly benefits from these arrangements and who bears the ultimate cost. It means demanding accountability, not just from individual companies, but from the systems that enable and even incentivize this behavior. Stronger laws, yes. Better enforcement, absolutely. But also a fundamental re-evaluation of what we as a society consider valuable. Is it just shareholder returns and GDP growth, or do things like clean air, safe products, fair labor, and a stable climate count for something too? Call me crazy, but I'm leaning towards the latter. Ultimately, this is about deciding what kind of world we want to live in. Do we want one where our worth is determined by a spreadsheet, where our safety is a negotiable commodity, and where our future is gambled away for short-term gain? Or do we want a world where economic activity serves human well-being and environmental health, not the other way around. It's a choice. And while the forces arrayed against that saner world are powerful, they are not invincible. Because the one thing their calculations can never truly account for is the collective will of people who've finally had enough of being treated like a rounding error. And that, at least, is something to build on. Now, if you'll excuse me, I think I need to go lie down.